Happy Friday to you all and good morning. You're watching Arirang News at 10 on this July 27th. Coming to you live from Seoul, I'm Xe-Pian and these are the stories we're following at this hour. Following through with its promise, North Korea is readying to return the remains of U.S. soldiers killed in the Korean War, and a U.S. aircraft flies over to the north for the transfer today. He used to be the voice of liberals and the weak. The late minor opposition party lawmaker Gov't's final goodbye is set to take place at the parliament this morning, the last day of his funeral service. Who is to blame? Laos officials insist that the power company in charge of the dam must be held legally responsible. Meanwhile, the rescue operation is still underway in the area affected by the flooding. It's one of the promises made at the summit in Singapore last month. North Korea returning the POW and MIA remains, including the immediate repatriation of those already identified. And on this Friday, marking the anniversary of the signing the armistice agreement, North Korea is set to be sending back the remains of the American war dead. For more on this, we go straight live to our Lee Ji-won standing by at Seoul's Foreign Ministry for us. So, Ji-won, what do we know so far?
South Korea's Yonhap News Agency reported earlier today, citing government sources, that a U.S. aircraft left South Korea's Osan Air Base at around 6 a.m. and is expected to have arrived in North Korea about an hour later. The 55 empty wooden caskets that were sent to the inter-Korean border village of Panmunjom last month were reportedly taken by the North, and according to the officials, that U.S. aircraft will be bringing them back later today with the remains inside. While many are expecting that to take place in the morning, there's been no official announcement from the U.S., the North, or UN command.
Now, so Ji-won, once the remains arrive here in South Korea, what happens next?
According to reports earlier this week, citing U.S. officials, a team of American forensic specialists will do an in-depth examination of the remains, looking for any identification like dog tags or uniforms, and that's expected to take about 5 days. The remains will likely be transferred to the metal coffins that have been prepared at the airbase during this process. Then afterward, the ceremony will be held at the base to honor the fallen, before their remains are flown to Hawaii for DNA identification, which will take months. Now, this comes as generals from the U.S. and North Korea met last week about the return of the remains, which was part of the agreement reached by North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump last month in Singapore. And so this move by Pyongyang is likely to help build trust between it and Washington and could add momentum to their talks. That's all from me, but I'll be back with more updates in our later newscast.
Thank you, our Lee Ji-won, following the return of the American soldiers from North Korea today. And as we wait for the details on North Korea returning the remains of American soldiers who passed away during the Korean War, today we take a look at how exactly that process takes place. Our Park Ji-won takes us to a site where they retrieved the remains of the war dead here in South Korea.
This is Seohwamyeon in the county of Injegun, Gangwon-do province. This region, located beyond a civilian access control line and right next to the inter-Korean border, was the backdrop of one of the bloodiest battles in 1951. It is also where the MND, or Ministry of National Defense Agency for Killed in Action Recovery and Identification, has spent the last 6 years searching and locating the remains of those who fell in battle. So far, the remains of 250 soldiers have been retrieved. Personal items are also found here, including an identification tag last week and a personal seal just a day ago.
One of the most important goals of the operation is to collect the remains and send them back to their family members, as identification tags or personal seals are the most paramount evidence for identification process. I feel a great sense of fulfillment and happiness when I find them.
South Korea's efforts to retrieve the remains of fallen heroes began back in 2000, 50 years after the outbreak of the Korean War. And in such efforts in 2007, the MND was officially launched. However, the task is far from being over. The remains of some 120,000 South Korean and some 8,000 U.S. soldiers who died during the Korean War still haven't been recovered. When remains of a soldier are found, there are usually personal items scattered in the vicinity. They are all retrieved and placed together, then wrapped neatly. The remains are all put in a casket and covered by the national flag. The verification of their identities is done mainly through DNA tests.
The percentage of the remains being identified is just around 1% so far. Because we have only collected about 40,000 DNA samples of post-war descendants, the number of fallen hairs that can be identified stands at around 130,000. We hope that the public more actively join in our initiatives.
When remains of UN forces or Chinese soldiers are found, they are repatriated to their respective countries. And with the US, the Defense Agency has conducted several joint recovery operations for the past decade. However, South and North Korea haven't yet jointly worked to recover war remains, and the nation's defense ministry expressed its hope that the two Koreas could soon be able to cooperate on retrieving the remains from the war that has never ended. Park Ji-won, Arirang News, Inje.
65 years have passed since the Korean War ended with an armistice agreement back in 1953, and this year the two Koreas hope to strike an end to the decades-long war. While South Korea is firm to declare an end to it within this year, North Korea and the U.S. seem to have differing views on whether nuclear disarmament has to come first. Our Oh Jung-hee tells us more on how the parties can work towards ending the war and whether that could help speed up Pyongyang's denuclearization.
The Korean War ended with an armistice agreement in 1953, and since then, Korea remains the only divided nation in the world. The people of the two Koreas live facing each other over a heavily militarized border. It's not a complete peace on the Korean peninsula, but a temporary ceasefire continuing for over 6 decades. 65 years have passed since the 1953 armistice agreement, and the two Koreas are moving to formally end that decades-long war. There was a previous attempt after the 2007 Inter-Korean Summit, but the latest attempt is stronger and is gaining much momentum as it was reaffirmed through the first ever North Korea-US Summit, and the two Koreas have set a specific deadline of within this year. July 27th, the anniversary of the armistice agreement, was seen as the most plausible date. But the overall process slowed down as Pyongyang and Washington faced the question of what has to come first. Washington is cautious about declaring the end of the war as it may get rid of military options to pressure the North to denuclearize. But Pyongyang wants the declaration first as that gives the regime a security guarantee.
The U.S. is concerned that North Korea may demand the withdrawal of U.S. forces from South Korea, but North Korea won't ever accept a deal where it has to abandon all of its nukes first. Seoul should call on North Korea to come up with a detailed denuclearization schedule while speaking to the U.S. about how they'll reward the regime throughout the process. And the declaration on ending the war should cover denuclearization as well to satisfy Washington.
Pundits add a war doesn't come to a formal end with a declaration only. It has to be stipulated in the peace treaty. The declaration itself does not have a legal binding power, but gives an assurance that the related parties will cooperate, which could accelerate North Korea's denuclearization.
The goals of denuclearization and a peace treaty are both too big to deal with. It's difficult to decide which has to be done first. The reason why the Panmunjom Declaration stipulated declaring an end to the Korean War within this year was to give North Korea an assurance as soon as possible that South Korea and the U.S. are taking confidence-building measures on their part. North Korea needs a reason to denuclearize, and declaring an end to the war provides that reason.
Watchers point out that the two Koreas could first end an unusual decades-long armistice and then settle on technical issues through a peace treaty afterwards. The foreign ministers of the two Koreas, the U.S. and possibly China, could discuss the matter when they attend the ASEAN Regional Forum in Singapore next week. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
And we take things to National Assembly. A state ceremony funeral for the late lawmaker Gov't, a floor leader for the minor opposition Justice Party, is being held at the parliament as we speak. The funeral procedure for the late Liberal lawmaker has been elevated to a parliamentary-level funeral ceremony since Thursday and has put all members of the parliament to serve as funeral commissioners. Now, the ceremony has begun at around 10 a.m. Korea time, and the participants there will spend the time to remember the three-term lawmaker's achievements in life. The former floor leader passed away on Monday in an apparent suicide after facing allegations that he received illegal political funds from a power blogger nicknamed Drew King. After the ceremony today, the deceased will be cremated and will lay at Moran Park in Namyangju City, where 160 other martyrs from justice and democracy are laid. Gathered at the nation's top office later this Friday afternoon will be the top commanders of South Korea's entire armed forces, including the Marine Corps. Chaired by the South Korean President Moon Jae-in, one of the key agenda is expected to be the military reform, which is one of the commander-in-chief's key policy initiatives. Since taking office in May last year, President Moon has been calling for efforts to eradicate what he calls deep-rooted corruption in the military and the defense industry. And Friday's meeting will be attended by some 180 officials, including Defense Minister Song Young-moo, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Chung Kyung-do, and Vincent Brooks, Commander-in-Chief of the ROK U.S. Combined Forces, President Moon's Chief of Staff Im Jong-seok, and his National Security Advisor Chung Eui-yong. And South Korean President Moon Jae-in made a surprise visit to a pub in downtown Seoul Thursday evening. There, he met with some 30 people, all differently impacted by the latest economic policy decisions. Our Blue House correspondent Moon Gon-young with the details.
What better way to finish off a sweltering workday than to cool down with a glass of ice-cold beer? Now, add a surprise visitor, the president. 7 p.m. on a Thursday, South Korean President Moon Jae-in makes a surprise visit to a local pub in the Gwanghwamun area in downtown Seoul. Stunned, awestruck, but wearing big grins on their faces are job seekers, owners of small businesses, self-employed and wage workers.
제가 지난 대선 때 국민과 소통 그렇게 잘 하겠다고 약속을 드리면서 이 퇴근길에 시민들을 만나겠다 그렇게 약속을 했었거든요.
The Blue House explains the participants had been pre-selected but unaware of their meeting with the president.
요즘 최저임금 또 노동시간 또 우리 자영업 그리고 또 고용 이런 문제들에 대해서 아주 심각하게 이야기하고 있는 그런 상황이어서 그런 말씀들 듣고자 자리를 마련했습니다.
The government's latest decision to raise hourly base pay to 8,350 won starting next year, up 10.9% from the current 7,530 won, and a cut in the maximum length of the working week have drawn criticism from employers and workers alike. The participants explained their own difficulties caused by the policy decisions, and President Moon agreed to hold another similar impromptu meeting in the near future. Moon Gon-young, Arirang News, The Blue House.
The collapse of the Laos dam, which claimed the lives of more than 20 people with 131 still missing, has led the Laos Minister of Energy and Mines to insist that the power company in charge of the dam construction must be held legally responsible. For more on the tragic accident and what it may mean for the company involved, our Lee Seung-jae tells us more.
The collapse of a hydroelectric dam in Attapeu province in Laos has caused massive destruction and claimed at least 20 lives. And according to the Laos Minister of Energy and Mines, Dr. Kemini Interath, the Xe-Pian Xe-Namnoy Power Company cannot deny its responsibility for the floods. In a press conference with Vientiane Times on Thursday, the minister said based on the concession agreement, all incidents are related to the dam construction and the responsibility for them must be fully held by the project developer. A senior official from the power company was quoted by Vientiane Times as saying that the firm was ready to handle the incident following the concession agreement and related laws, adding that the company would not be attempting to deny its responsibility for the tragic flood and its results. The Xe-Pian Xe-Namnoy Power Company is a joint investment venture whose major shareholders include two South Korean firms, SK Engineering and Construction and Korea Western Power. Meanwhile, troops continue to search for survivors in the remote region of southern Laos on Thursday. While the scale of the disaster is still unclear due to the inaccessibility of the area, reports say that 27 people were confirmed dead and 131 are still missing, with more than 3,000 still waiting to be rescued from swirling floodwaters.
The most damage is in Sanam Sai, and the situation currently is that there are displaced people who don't have shelter, and we continue to search for the dead and missing people at the moment.
While schools in safe areas are currently being used as evacuation centers, there's still a lack of food and medicine, as rescue and relief teams from all around Asia are heading to Atapu to help. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And with the hot and steamy weather gripping the nation for days, the South Korean government has rolled up its sleeves for some countermeasures. And our Xe-Pian reports.
The Office for Government Policy Coordination has announced that it'll secure at least 1 million additional kilowatts of electricity by the middle of August, when power demand is expected to reach its peak. It said it'll also be ready to provide even more from thermal power stations in an emergency if the extra reserves are not enough. The government promised to pay the air conditioning bills at public centers for senior citizens where many of the elderly like to spend time together. It'll also increase on-site checkups on senior citizens living alone. And it plans to offer cooling vests and ice packs to construction workers to help prevent heat stroke. Hours will be extended to 9 p.m. at public facilities designated as heat shelters while people can come in and cool off. The government will not only provide air conditioners for farm animals, but also shorten the time it takes for farmers to receive disaster insurance payouts when there's damage caused by nature, as in the current heat wave. It'll also assist fish farms with money to buy oxygenators to minimize the impact of rising water temperatures. The Ministry of the Interior and Safety said it has given out $10 billion to provincial governments and encouraged them to spend the funds in a timely way as needs arise to effectively fight the heat wave. Xe-Pian, Arirang News.
And despite the grilling weather, many people here in the country are away on their summer vacation. And with the temperatures hovering so high for a while now, many are trying to enjoy their days off away from the heat. And our Ko Ryun-hee guides us to some of the special tourist hotspots where people can cool off.
The intense heat in South Korea is changing how some people are spending their summer vacation. Here at Gyeongpo Beach in Gangneung, Gangwon-do Province, people are huddling under big beach umbrellas to escape the blazing sun. But aside from a dip in the sea, where can you cool off? One of the most popular spots is Hwam Cave, located in Cheongseon, Gangwon-do Province. This place used to be a gold mine and was in operation from 1922 to 1945. Natural stalactites were found inside, and it was later developed for tourists. According to an employee, this summer has brought more visitors than last year because people like the cooler air. If you venture inside this cave, the mercury dips to a refreshing 11 degrees Celsius. It's almost 20 degrees cooler than the sizzling temperature outside in Cheongseon.
We heard that this cave is cool and refreshing, but I am actually cold right now. My kids even had to wear jackets.
It's both entertaining and educational for kids who can watch these little goblin characters explain the process of gold mining. Visitors can also learn about the mine's history, how Koreans were forced to work here during Japan's colonial rule. If it's too chilly in the cave, another option is Anbandegi village in Gangneung. It's a farm village located at an altitude of 1,100 meters. So you can not only feel the breeze, but also get an astonishing view of the endless cabbage fields.
Because this place is located at a high altitude, it's really cool here, especially in the shade.
And when the sun goes down, it's time for stargazing, which some people don't mind doing for hours.
I wanted to visit somewhere new rather than the well-known beaches. I came here to look at the beautiful stars and relieve my stress.
The heat in South Korea is likely to continue for a while, so for many holiday makers looking to cool off, it's time to think outside the box. 고륜이, 아리랑 뉴스, 강릉.
Pakistan's former cricket star Imran Khan has declared victory in the country's general election, which has been marred by violence and accusations of election rigging by the opposition. Now, for more on this and other news around the world, we turn to our Arirang at the news center. So, Aram, what do we know so far?
Well, some of the leaders of almost every political party in Pakistan, except Khan's, of course, have alleged that Wednesday's election was rigged. Khan's rival party leaders and supporters of jailed former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif have accused Khan of colluding with the army to manipulate the vote. Although Pakistan's military rule has weakened, it still holds significant power.
We believe that in Karachi, total irregularity have been committed by the Election Commission of Pakistan with the support of some people who are in the corridor of power. And we believe that this election has been a controversial election in whole of Pakistan.
It's a flagrant violation. The public is protesting, and I am compelled to say that we reject these election results. We don't accept these results.
There have also been outbreaks of some violence, with a bomb going off at a polling station which killed more than 30 people. In a televised speech to his supporters, Khan rejected the allegations of ballot rigging, but said he will investigate his opponent's claims.
I believe this was Pakistan's most transparent election, and I believe Pakistanis have never participated in an election the way they did today. Whatever concerns the opposition has about rigging, we are willing to investigate it with them.
Official results are yet to be announced, and it is still unclear if Khan's party is able to secure a parliamentary majority. If it does, then Khan is on track to become the new Prime Minister. A man has detonated a small bomb outside the US Embassy in Beijing, injuring himself but no one else. Police say the explosion occurred at around 1 p.m. Thursday local time at the southeast corner of the embassy compound, but didn't cause any damage. The 26-year-old suspect has been identified as Jiang Mu from Inner Mongolia province. There is currently no word on the motive, but police are investigating. The United Kingdom is legalising medicinal cannabis from the autumn. The announcement was made by Home Secretary Sajid Javid on Thursday after the government gave the green light to relax laws governing the substance. Cannabis had been classified as a drug with no therapeutic value, but after a review, drug advisors and medical officials concluded that it does actually have benefits for some conditions. The change in law comes after a desperate campaign by parents of children with severe epilepsy who had been denied cannabis oil, which is known to control seizures. Turning over to Germany now, where around 4,000 people have participated in a so-called Mud Olympics. The event was held last weekend in the northern coastal town of Brunsbüttel to help raise money for cancer patients. 40 teams from Germany and neighbouring countries competed in mud volleyball, mud football and slimy sledging for medals. There were also prizes for the funniest team name, best mud mascot and best costume. The annual event has been raising money for charity since 2004, and this year it managed to collect more than $55,000 US.
Good morning. Today is Jungbok, the middle of the hottest part of summer here in Korea, while Japan is bracing for the 12th typhoon of the season. And Typhoon Chongdari could make landfall in Honshu on Saturday night, but the storm is likely to bring little or no rainfall to Korea. And for today, some of the eastern regions might see a few sporadic showers and possibly some thunder and lightning at times. And this afternoon, Seoul will see a high of 35 degrees Celsius. And for a heads up, the longest blood moon eclipse of the century takes place tonight here in South Korea. And the total eclipse will last from 3:24 until 4:30 on Saturday morning. But you will not need to dress warm to check that out, the phenomenon. It's going to be very warm and sweltering temperatures will persist for the time being. And today's 중복 again, and on 중복, many Koreans eat samgyetang or ginseng chicken soup to beat the heat. But health experts actually suggest it's better to eat smaller cold meals such as salad, as a big meal expends energy and generates heat during digestion. And always remember to drink plenty of water. That's Korea for you, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
And that's it for us at the hour, but keep it tuned to Arirang News for more news updates coming up at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching and goodbye for now.